Welcome to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, you are having a tremendous week so far. Of course, that's if you chose not to watch Braves baseball on Wednesday night. Obviously, we can't thank you enough for joining us here on the Hammer Territory Podcast, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Always a pleasure to be with you, even when we score 12 runs or when we score 1-0 runs. And of course, my podcast partner, Stephen Tolbert, is here with me. And Stephen, I feel there's only one way to describe Wednesday night. Max Fried chose a bad night to stink on the same night that our offense chose to get back to.
It's very difficult in a 3-game sample size. The Braves have played 3 games here in the last 3 days to score 13 runs and only give up 6 runs. So the Braves in the last 3 games have scored 13 runs. They've only given up 6 runs and go 1-2. And that's what the Braves have done because they scored 0 runs on Monday. They scored 12 runs last night and they scored 1 run tonight. And if that is not just a perfect encapsulation of this season, I don't know what is. Every night it's like shaking a magic 8 ball just to see what the offense is you're just praying that the offense shows some sign of life early, because if they don't show any sign of life early, it's not coming. And we've just seen that over and over. And when we got to like the 4th inning, honestly, it was like 3-0 in like the 4th inning. And I was like, this game's over. Because like once the Braves get to that point in the game and the offense hasn't arrived, it doesn't arrive. And, the Nationals already had enough runs to win that game. And it's just such a deflating feeling to know that like 3-0 in the 4th inning is like an insurmountable lead. And that's just what it feels like with this team. They showed a flash in the pan last night about, and it's what I've been saying, that they still have offensive talent. Michael Harris, Jorge Soler, Marcell Ozuna, Matt Olson, Ramon Laureano, Kelenic, the catchers, like there's still enough talent here to be a decent offense. There's not enough talent to be great, but there's enough talent to be decent. And honestly, scoring 12, like it's almost like a T. It's almost more painful, watching them score 12 runs and then go right back to just being awful. Yeah, it's very good. It's very good for our podcast if the Braves make the playoffs. Like the podcast numbers go through the roof during the playoffs. We know this for doing this for years now. Obviously, this is a new podcast. It would help us a lot if the Braves make the playoffs. So we have like a personal investment in the Braves making the playoffs. It's good for us. With that being said, I do kind of hope the Dodgers come into town this weekend and just take the Braves out to the woodshed and, old yeller them right out of the season. Like part of me hopes for that, truly. Like I want them to win, obviously. I want them to make the playoffs, but there is another part of me that's like, I wouldn't hate it if the Dodgers just came in and bludgeoned these guys for 4 games and it ended and we could at least emotionally get past this season. Obviously, we're going to cover the team no matter what, but at least emotionally we could get past this season. And yeah, tonight's just another in a long, long season of frustrating games. And I'm guessing the frustrating games are not done quite yet. And I'm guessing we got a few more in store. And it's just going to be like this every night where you're just praying to God that the offense shows any sign of life at any point, because if it doesn't come early, it's not coming at all. And that's just, it's a deflating way to watch a baseball game.
And the crazy thing about it, we've used the word microcosm quite a bit, taking, like you did these 3-game sample sizes and just saying that this in and of itself is even though it's a small sample size, it's still an accurate representation of the season as a whole. But it's almost the Braves offense where it struggles is almost reverse of what you usually see. Tuesday, against a decent starting pitcher, the Braves showed that they have the offensive ceiling to still play with anyone. Like this is still one of the more powerful teams in baseball. They've proven it with the fact that they've been near the top or at the top of the majors in home runs in the second half of the season. But where this Braves team struggles, where you're talking about what's keeping this Braves team from being great offensively, even without all the talent that they've lost to injury, where this Braves team struggles is the infrequency of them having a solid offensive floor. There is so much variance. They either play like the worst offense in baseball or the best offense in baseball, and far more often they're towards the worst offense in baseball than the best. That's why I have very little faith in the Braves being able to figure it out against the Dodgers. That's why I have very little faith, in feeling confident that the Braves are going to make the playoffs. It's not that they don't have the offensive potential to be able to do what they need to do to make the playoffs and make noise in the postseason. It's just that they're so infrequent of having a solid floor of consistently scoring 4 to 5 runs that really makes you question their true ability to be able to make the playoffs. And that's what's so frustrating. And with the Dodgers coming up, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but this team has got to figure out how to average 4 or 5 plus runs for them to truly have a shot, I think, to make the playoffs. And I just have very little to no faith they'll figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, honesty compels me to say, like, the Mets have been a much better team than the Braves for a long time now. Like, the Mets got off to a miserable start. The Braves got off to a very hot start. And so it's taken a long time for, like, their past to converge once again and for the Mets to pass the Braves. But for a long time now, the Mets have been a better team. And they're just more consistent on offense. They've pitched way better than I thought they would. And the Braves' problems have just seemingly never gone away. Like, their big number one problem is they can't score. And we thought that after enough time had passed that, they would get hot. Again, I know they have injuries. I get it. They are without their 3 of their regulars. They're without Acuna, they're without Riley, they're without Ozzie. But they still have 6 of the guys that they were planning on having in the offense. So, like, yes, they're out. They're without their, especially 2 of their big guys with Acuna and Riley. And that's why I mean they have no business being a great offense. You can't lose Acuna and Riley and still be a great offense. But they have 6 of the 9 guys that they were planning on having, and on top of that, guys like Laureano, Whit Merrifield, who have filled in for some of these guys, have done really well. So you add all that together, this still should be a lineup that can score, decently well, some level of consistency. The injuries, and we talked about this last show, but the injuries are not enough to explain all of this. And Brad Scott, I thought, did a good job of breaking this down on the show they did on last night, I think it was, or it was either their Sunday show or last night show. I can't remember which one, but the underperformance, the lack of production from offensive talent that they were supposed to get from guys that have been either healthy for all of the season or healthy for most of the season is just as big of a reason for this, this problem as the injuries are. And yeah, I mean, the pitching can only carry you. Like, it's so hard to only give up 2 runs a night from your pitching staff. Like, if that's how you have to win a game, if you have to only give up 2 runs and otherwise you can't win, then it's damn near impossible, quite honestly. It's a miracle. That's how good the pitching has been this year, by the way. The Braves are like number 1 in every single significant pitching category. Literally every one of them. They're number 1 in baseball. And that's the only reason the Braves are still alive at this point, is because the pitching has just been so freaking good, like so much better than I ever thought the pitching staff would be. And they've had to be that because the offense has given them very little to work with night after night after night after night. And, of course, we saw it again tonight.
Snoring sucks. So does congestion from sinuses, allergies, or a cold. And you might not even realize how much it's affecting you. FT fam, you need to try Navage Nasal Care. It's been a game changer for me.
Yeah, Kratz, Navage uses that smooth saline flow and nasal suction to clear those nasal passages.
Now I'm breathing easier, which is a pretty big deal in my life. My Navage unit is clearing my congestion fast day and night. I use it twice per day as part of my daily routine.
We want to help you get relief from your congestion too. Our listeners can order a convenient Navage starter pack
including a nose cleaner with batteries included and 30 original salt pods. Everything you need to get started. Plus, get a cleaning kit as a free gift with your order, but only going to our exclusive URL, navage.com/FAL, and using our promo code FAL. Again, to order your Navage free cleaning kit and for full product details, go to navage.com/FAL. That's promo code FAL at navage.com/FAL.
So, of course, the performance on the field on Wednesday night was pretty disappointing, but you're used to it by now with how often it has occurred. Unfortunately, the other thing that has occurred, it seems nearly as often off the field, is significant injuries. And the Braves once again dealt with that during the day on Wednesday. Of course, if you recall from Tuesday night, despite how great it was to see the offense erupt for 12 runs and finally have an easy victory, Reynaldo Lopez only pitched one inning on Tuesday night. After the game, he and Brian Snicker commented on, what he was experiencing. And Reynaldo Lopez, I appreciate, how transparent he was. He just simply said, he didn't really feel, he seemed to be in good spirits. He didn't really feel as if it was anything major. He just did not have the usual ability that he had to ramp it up to 96 plus. He just didn't have that on Tuesday, and that's probably what contributed to him running into a bit of trouble in the first inning on Tuesday. So they did an MRI. Nothing structural showed up as being concerning. They feel that they may be able to put him on a throwing program here in a few days, but they did place him on the 15-day IL. Daysbel Hernandez was called up in his spot. But Stephen, while overall it's good initial news, with it being this late in the season, you don't know if Reynaldo Lopez is going to come back. Like you hope that he does, but you don't know. And I know that all four of us, Brad, Scott, you, myself, we basically said in different variations, throughout the season that as long as the Braves have Sale and Fried, that's a pretty good 1-2 combination. In terms of the starting staff, you have to feel pretty good about yourself in a series. But Reynaldo Lopez has maintained his effectiveness throughout most of the year, especially coming back from his injury in August. And his loss should not be discounted. He, in my opinion, this season has been the most trusted right-handed arm that the Braves have to be able to work through a lineup, whether it's under 500 or a quality lineup. He going into the playoffs, he was the most trusted right-handed arm that could work through a playoff lineup multiple times. And now Atlanta may be without him. I know we talk about the offense, and the injuries it's experienced. I know the pitching staff overall has just been incredible, but this is a big loss, and you have to hope that he comes back, or the Braves are going to have to go to less trustworthy options, potentially if they make the playoffs, and especially down the stretch just to try to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, honestly, because all the news was good. They did test initially after he came out of the game, and they were all clean. They said the MRI, the shoulder was structurally sound. There was nothing wrong structurally, just a little bit of inflammation, which is all good news. But then they immediately put him on the IL, and there's 17 days left in the season, so a 15-day IL stint. I mean, people can do the math. I did find it notable that they put him on the IL immediately. If you remember back when he got hurt the first time, there was this long wait to put him on the IL because they thought maybe he could pitch through it. Thought maybe, by not putting him on the IL, they could save a few days and he could come back sooner. It didn't end up working. They ended up putting him on the IL eventually, but it was notable to me that they immediately put him on the 15-day IL this time, and I get why they're trying to get him, I'm sure, back as fast as possible. But yeah, Snit was very non-committal about the timeline. When reporters spoke to him today before the game, he just said they'll know more about the timeline once they get into a throwing program and see how he feels, which, that makes sense. Of course, you have no idea how a guy's going to feel, 10 days from now. So, but yeah, if you're a Braves fan, you just kind of, honestly, the prudent thing to do is probably to expect that he's probably done. It doesn't mean he's definitely done, but when you're getting put on the 15-day IL in the middle of September, I tweeted this today. I'm going to be very to see what they do in terms of his role if he does come back. Are they just going to throw him right back in the rotation? Are they going to throw him in the bullpen? We know he's a really good reliever. He's done that for years. If he does come back, his role is going to be very interesting, but Yeah, the fact that they immediately put him on, the fact that it was a shoulder to begin with, which is always scary. Yeah, if I'm honest, given the way the rest of the year has gone, I'm not really expecting much from him. If he comes back and is able to maybe pitch in that last series against Kansas City and then pitch in the postseason, if the Braves are even in the postseason, quite honestly, I mean, by the time these 15 days are up, depending on how this Dodgers series goes, the Braves season might be over anyways. So, it's very possible we've seen the last of Reynaldo Lopez for 2024. I will say the fact that there was no structural damage does mean obviously much more positive things for 2025 and beyond. The Braves do have this guy signed for multiple years after this year, so that matters. That's a part of this. But in terms of 2024, I mean, the earliest he can come back is the last series of the year, and if the Braves don't start playing better baseball, their season might be done by then.
Yeah, and you look at it as well. Over the past 6 weeks, basically over the last 2 months of the season, Reynaldo Lopez is going to have spent half his time on the IL. One for I believe it was a forearm. I believe he had a forearm injury that he was dealing with, and now a shoulder injury. So you also have to wonder, what's he going to look like? Well, what's his effectiveness going to be? And if he's put in the bullpen spot, or, that means Charlie Morton or Spencer Swellenbach is going to be starting, potential game 3. But even bigger than that, this is 3 starts now that you don't have one of your better pitchers, one of the better pitchers in the National League this year, going. You're going to have to replace him in the starting rotation. So just once again, the Braves having to unexpectedly alter what they were going to do with less effective options and simply hope for the best. But speaking of being less effective, one of the things that has stood out to me the most, you said some many great things all season, Stephen, but one thing that I thought was so true, I believe it was the last time it was one of our podcasts last week. You talked about the fact that if the starting pitching for the Braves is not spectacular, there's a very good chance the Braves are going to lose the game. And we're starting to see a bit less effectiveness from this Braves starting staff. Spencer Swellenbach, his last outing against Toronto over the weekend. Max Fried tonight, he didn't look that great. I know that a lot of the runs that Washington scored was off weak contact, but Max didn't seem to have his usual control. Runners got on base by hitting the ball hard. Once again, we're seeing that if the margin for error is so small, because of how Jekyll and Hyde this offense is, that if this starting pitching is not crisp and it's not given a quality to dominating start, this team is really putting in a position to where it's going to be hard for them to win.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time. I mean, it's 100% true, everything you just said, and we've been talking about it all year, that the pitching staff has to be damn near perfect for these guys to win. So I have a hard time blaming the pitching staff when they're not perfect. Like Max was not good tonight. He had base runners he gave up like 12 base runners in 4 innings or something like that, something crazy. Um, you know, and actually if you look at since he's come back from the IL, Max has got like a 4.50 ERA or something like that since he's come back from the IL. He hasn't actually been the typical Max Fried since he came back, which is a different topic for, especially if we get into the playoffs. I don't think he's quite been as sharp since he came back. But again, I'm not going to spend very much time ripping the starting rotation. We can nitpick stuff. Swellenbach's a rookie. He's pitched more innings this year than he's probably ever pitched in his life, and on any level. Counting bullpens. I mean, he's just blown past his career innings limit. Charlie Morton, every time we think Charlie Morton is going to, ride off into the sunset, he comes roaring back and throws out a solid month. Chris Sale's, of course, probably going to win the Cy Young. Reynaldo's been fantastic. Max has been up and down by his standards, but yeah, I have a hard time mustering up any energy to rip on the starting rotation. They have to be so perfect to win games, and it's just an impossible way to. I mean, this is what the Mariners have tried to do for like the last 5 years is put up an incredible rotation, a really good bullpen, and try to win every game 2-1. And you just can't do that. You just cannot. You can't play this many close games. There's a reason why 1-run games are used as a metric to determine if a team has been lucky or unlucky, because there's just a lot of variance. There's more variance in 1-run games than any other type of game, because it just takes one pitch. It takes one misplay, one run to flip the game. And when you play all of these close games, you're just going to lose a bunch of them. That's just how it goes. Like the point of a good offense is to give you a margin of error where you get past the variance, where you get past the randomness, and you get into a much more consistent way of winning baseball games. This has been the Mariners' problem forever, and this is now the Braves' problem. You can't score, you can't win consistently. It's just the bottom line. I don't care how good your pitching is. You get into all these close games, you burn out your bullpen, you're just going to lose a bunch of them. That's the nature of baseball. And, we've said it all year. I'm so sick of saying it, but until this team scores runs at a somewhat consistent level, this is what they are. They are they've been a 500 team now for about 5 months, and that's what they are. I mean, they're still 13 games over 500, which is exactly where they were, at the end of April. They have literally not added a single game to that ledger because they have been a five. I mean, that's what you are. When you can't score, you're a 500 team because you're just playing all these one-run games. Those kind of games break both ways at a pretty even clip. And that's what you are. And that's what the Braves are.
Yeah, I think it may have been 2021. I think that was the year where we were talking about the Braves trying to win 3 games in a row, and every time they did, they were like 0-10 or 0-11 when they tried to do it. I can't remember the exact statistic, but Brad Rowland made up a great point. I'm not sure somebody else made it, but Brad mentioned it to us before the podcast. The Braves have tried 7 different times this year to go 14 games above 500, and they are 0-7 in those games. They've not been better than 13 games over 500 since late April, which is the definition of a 500 team. And just to be clear, bringing up the fact that the, starting staff is, starting to be a little bit less effective. Agreed with Steven. And this, my point was not to in any way, shape, or form criticize the starting staff. It's just to point out that the starting staff doing what it was doing, nearly a month of the starters going without allowing 3 or more runs in a game, is just unheard of. It was an incredible streak, and you likely were not going to see it continue. You're likely we're going to see it stop at some point. And with
that was a stretch where the Braves needed to play like 20-5 baseball.
They needed to play to the level that the Mets did. But the big thing that stands out is that what the Braves couldn't do that the Mets have done all year, the difference between the Mets and the Braves over the past 4 months has been the Mets beating teams that they're supposed to beat. But because the Braves offense can't be trusted, they can't beat teams that they're supposed to beat.
Yeah.
And so that's what really has stood out. But now with Reynaldo Lopez on the IL, you're going to have an arm step up, Steven. So, you definitely, spotlight turns to, Charlie Morton's, continuing his good stretches of late. Spencer Swellenbach hopefully gaining some effectiveness back, but Grant Holmes potentially stepping into a rotation spot. The Braves are going to go with Swellenbach, Sale, Morton, and Fried in their 4 games against the Dodgers over the weekend into Monday. Does Grant Holmes get an option after that potentially? Could we see AJ Smith-Shawver potentially be an option for the Braves? It's going to be quite interesting to see what happens. And the other thing that kind of concerns me, Stephen, when it comes to a less effective starting staff, and now you're losing one of your more reliable starters, this puts even more pressure on a tired bullpen. So we talk about that the Braves need their pitching to be as pristine as possible, and you just mentioned that if they're not, how hard it is. The one other thing that stands out is that losing another arm to injury, that heightens the chance that you're going to continue to see fatigue play a bigger part in what the Braves are doing, and that's a real concern, especially for the bullpen.
Yeah, I'm assuming. I mean, we haven't heard anything. They haven't made this call yet. I'm assuming Grant Holmes is just going to go back to the rotation. I don't know. He's been a multi-inning guy. I'm guessing they'll probably try to stretch him out over a couple starts where he maybe goes 4 innings one and then maybe 5 or 6 the next. But who knows? Maybe AJ Smith-Shawver comes up at some point and replaces somebody. They brought up Days Bell. In AJ's spot, which is what made me think that Grant Holmes was just going to go to the rotation and Daysbell would just go into Grant Holmes's bullpen spot. But we'll see what they do. It's really only going to be 2 starts. I mean, again, we're in the middle of September. We got 2 weeks of baseball left, so it's not talking about a long-term problem here. It's going to be a pretty short-term problem, one way or the other. So yeah, I'm assuming Grant Holmes. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the bullpen really had to, they had to throw 8 innings yesterday because, Reynaldo came out of the game after the first inning. Max did a good job of at least, getting some innings tonight. It was looking rough there in like the second and third inning. He was already at like 50, 60 pitches. He had a ton of base runners. I was really, the Braves get an off day tomorrow, so that does help. But I was really worried that he was going to come out of that game early and the bullpen was going to have to cover up another 5 or 6 innings. But yeah, I mean, losing Reynaldo sucks. There's just no other way to say it. Even if he does come back for the postseason, losing him for this stretch run in the middle of a dogfight, playoff race just sucks. And other guys are going to have to step up. Grant Holmes did a pretty good job in the rotation, I thought, for what he is. And I'm guessing that's where they're going to go. But who knows? You might see Ian Anderson. You might see AJ Smith-Shawver. They do have a couple options in Gwinnett if they want to go that route. But the main thing is the offense. The offense has just got to show up, like it's actually not against the rules to get hot for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Like that's perfectly legal in baseball. You can stay hot for like 3 or 4 weeks. You don't have to just stay hot for like 2 days and then go right back to being crap. So if the offense can, once again, for the millionth time, if the offense can show any life, then the Braves are not dead in the water. But if they keep doing this, where every other game is 1-2-0 runs, then it's going to be a pretty quiet October, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. So let's turn our attention to the Dodgers. And if you have a feeling of gloom and doom, if you're not looking forward to this weekend, I don't blame you. I'm right there with you. It's not me wanting. I very badly do not want to be negative about the Braves' chances. I have remained quietly confident up until about this week in the Braves figuring it out finally and being able to pull ahead and figure it out to where they'd be in a playoff position. But with the injury to Reynaldo Lopez, and again, this offense just showing a spurt of success, but then going right back to being dormant, it's hard to have faith. But two things stand out to me, Steven, is that, again, I mentioned that, the Mets, credit to them, they have been playing excellent baseball. I think that they have the best record in baseball over the past 3+ months. The difference between their success over the past 3 months and the Braves' lack of success, the Mets have consistently beat teams that they're supposed to beat. They've also done pretty good against teams that are, of equal talent. But what has stood out about the Braves this year, the Braves have played better against quality teams than they have teams under 500. So coming into this weekend, the Mets and Braves are facing arguably the two best teams in baseball. The Mets have 4 against the Phillies. The Braves have 4 against the Dodgers. The Mets right now are a game up in the wild card. A couple of things that stand out for me in this Dodgers series, Stephen, for the Braves to find themselves in a similar position as they are now, or maybe a favorable position on Tuesday, once this 4-game series against the Dodgers is done. They've got to get a split. They have to figure out how to get multiple wins or better in this series over the weekend. They just have to. And the only way this team is going to do that, in my opinion, is if they get back to hitting home runs. They don't necessarily have to hit more home runs than the Dodgers. It would be nice. It would they probably do need to be able to get those multiple wins, but they just don't need to be severely out-homered. They got to hit home runs for this offense to have a chance. And the one saving grace that I'll say is that stands out, the Dodgers pitching staff, I believe, is 24th this year in home runs per 9 innings. So this Dodgers pitching staff can give up home runs, but if the Braves are not hitting home runs, I find it very hard they have a chance. That, to me, is the biggest key in this series. Can the Braves' power return? If it does, they may have a chance. If it doesn't, it could be a very long weekend.
Yeah. The Dodgers have dealt with quite a bit on the injury side, kind of opposite of the Braves. Well, no, they lost Mookie too. I was going to say they've dealt with most of it on the pitching side, but they end up losing Mookie for like 2 months or 3 months or something like that. So they've dealt with a lot of injuries. The difference, of course, is they're getting pretty much all of their guys back, and the Braves are not getting a bunch of their guys back. But the Dodgers are the Dodgers. The Braves went to LA early in this year and just got creamed for 3 games. And honestly, if you go back and look at like where this bad run of play started, that's essentially never ended. It was basically in that Dodgers series where the Braves went to LA and just got smacked around for 3 games, and they've honestly had a hard time rebounding ever since. And yeah, I'm not overly optimistic, especially without Reynaldo. Swellenbach is a rookie who's up against more innings than he's ever thrown. Of course, I always have confidence in Chris Sale. And then you got Morton and Max. We'll see how it goes. There is a part of me that feels like Shohei Ohtani is going to come in and do to the Braves what Ronald Acuna Jr. did last year when the Braves went to LA for 4 games and took 3 of 4. And Ronald basically won the MVP in that series by just destroying the Dodgers for 4 games. And part of me feels like Shohei might come in and do something like that. The Braves have never been able to get Shohei Ohtani out. Even with the Angels, he just destroyed Braves pitching. It's not unusual. He destroys everybody, but yeah, we'll see. I don't have the most confidence. I don't have confidence in this team when they're playing the Nationals, so I certainly don't have confidence in them when they're playing the Braves. If the pitching can hold up, that's what we've said all year, right? The pitching's got to give up like 3 runs or less. And if they can do that, the Braves got a shot, because that's essentially what it takes for the Braves to win games. If the offense wants to wake up and hit some homers, then I'll take it. Like you said, they've done pretty well against good teams this year, the Dodgers notwithstanding. So we'll see. But yeah, with the Mets playing the Phillies, maybe the Phillies can give the Braves some help. The division race is over, so obviously every Braves fan needs to be a Phillies fan this weekend, and hope the Phillies sweep the Mets. But yeah, the Braves are going to need some help, and the Braves, they got to find some offense somewhere. I don't know where they're going to get it. Marcell Ozuna's been a little cold. Solaire's been cold. Michael Harris had a good series in Washington. Matt Olson's been much better lately. We'll see. They need offense somewhere, and they need the pitching staff to keep on being elite.
Well, and I just have to, because it's just I can't go a whole podcast without being some sort of positive. It's just not in me, I don't think. But what I will say is this: is that I think it's right. It's perfectly sensible for any person to say it's just hard to have faith in this Braves team. But this is also an opportunity for the Braves to figure out, what if we could figure out a formula that may work now, that could help us down the stretch and into the playoffs. Is it homers? Is it getting better, more productive with runners in scoring position like we haven't been all year? Sure, it's a variety of things. But the point that I'm getting at is that this is also an opportunity for the Braves to be able to, if they have success, this could be the spark that they need to go on the run that they need to. Whatever lack of faith you have in that, I don't blame you one bit. I don't think, I find it very hard to believe it's going to happen. But it could happen. And the other thing to consider is that the Braves, again, here recently over the past month, they've had multiple times in which it's felt like rock bottom. That loss to Colorado in Colorado, what did the Braves do? They came right back and had the best stretch of the season. In the midst of that, they lost Austin Riley for 8 weeks due to getting hit by a pitch. What they do? They came right back and beat the Phillies. And this game and this series is at home, which definitely helps out as well. So is all hope lost? No. Can the Braves still make up whatever happens in this Dodger series? Will the Braves still have time to make up for it? Yes. But at some point, this team has to help itself. That's the thing that stands out to me. It has to help itself. It's done it multiple times this year against quality teams. Can it do it again? That remains to be seen. But as much as we're talking about, hey, it's more than likely it's not going to be a good weekend, so on and so forth, if the Braves could figure out how to find some success, that really could be a launching point to where they could get that spark that you talk about, Stephen, for 2 weeks and find themselves in a better than expected position next week to kind of, take the season, to take control of the rest of the season and maybe use a good weekend to really spark them to go on a good run.
Yeah. I will say this, the Dodgers are not playing great baseball right now. I think the Cubs the Cubs are winning right now in LA. I think if they win this game tonight, I think the Cubs will actually sweep the Dodgers. If I am remembering that correctly, I think they had won the first 2 games of that series. So the Dodgers are like 5-5 in the last 10. They're kind of treading water. I mean, they're on pace to win 100 games, so it's a lot easier to tread water. But yeah, they're not playing great baseball. Their offense has been up and down. Their pitching staff has been, it's obviously been hurt. So that's a big part of it. But who knows? The Braves don't typically play the Dodgers well in the regular season, but like you said, it's been such a weird year, and things have just been backwards and random and weird. Who knows? Maybe the Braves take 3 or 4 and they get right back into this, and the Phillies, maybe the Phillies can help the Braves out and take care of the Mets, and we'll see. It's not what I'm expecting, but it's baseball. Crazier things have happened. The Braves do have Chris Sale. They do have Charlie Morton. They do have Max Fried. And Swellenbach's been really good most of the year. So, they do have a chance in all 4 games. I will say that. But the offense has just got to wake up. It can't do this. If they score, if they have, if you look at the end of the 4-game series and they've scored 8 runs total, 10 runs total, then, I'm guessing that the Dodgers took 3 or 4 pretty comfortably. But we'll see. It's baseball. Weird things happen in small samples. And I still think this team has enough talent. I know the injuries are part of it, but I still think there's enough talent on this team. It just has not played to its level all year. And so it's tough to expect it to start in the back end of September against one of the best teams in baseball. But again, it's baseball. We'll see what happens. Anything can happen. It'll be interesting. We're going to cover it either way, but it's baseball. Anything can happen.
And for anyone who hears what I'm about to say, if you bring it up to me, I promise you I will absolutely deny it for the rest of my days. But the simple truth also is this, is that as big of a fan of the Braves as everybody in the Braves fan base is, you need to be as just a big of a fan of the Phillies over the next 2.5 weeks. The Mets literally, I believe it's 2 days ago, per Tankathon, had the toughest schedule left in baseball this year because the most games they have left is against the Phillies, who also happen to be the best team the Mets are going to play for the rest of the season. The Phillies have something to play for, just like the Dodgers do. But for the Braves to be able to get some help, for the Braves to be able to finally, hopefully, see this stretch of incredible winning that the Mets are doing break a bit, it's got to be the Phillies having, helping them out. Can it happen? Sure. Is it likely? Maybe. And I know that it's not fun to hear, but if you're a Braves fan and you especially don't have faith that the Braves themselves are going to be able to, for once take control of their own destiny and earn the playoffs for themselves, then the next best thing you could hope for is the Phillies, win 6 out of the 5 or 6 or 7 out of their 7 games remaining with the Mets. So, that's what I'll say. Doesn't sound fun to say it, but that's kind of where we are with how this season has gone. We honestly are now saying things that we never thought that we would say, but hey, that's the point that I'm at to try to will this team to a playoff spot.
Oh yeah, I mean the division race is over. The division race was over the moment the Braves lost 3 or 4 in Philly. So there's no, you need to be rooting for the Phillies hard the next 2 weeks, which sucks. I mean, I get it, but if you want to make the playoffs, now if you would rather this season just end and you don't want to make the playoffs, then yeah, root for the Mets. But yeah, I mean, it's scoreboard watching season. I know the players and the coaches don't do it. They always say, we just concentrate on the game in front of us or whatever they say. But for fans, it's scoreboard watching season. The Mets losing is a big deal every night. And, they were being no hit going into the 9th inning tonight and then scored 6 runs on the Blue Jays and ended up blowing out the Blue Jays. So that's why they're a game up now with the Braves loss. But yeah, scoreboard watching season, we need the Phillies to be awesome next 10 days since they played the Mets, over 7 of them, and maybe the Braves can hold their own against the Dodgers. Maybe they can win the series. I mean, it can happen. It not likely to happen. The Braves are almost certainly going to be the underdog in all 4 of these games. Maybe not this Chris Sale game, but probably the other 3. But who knows? It's baseball. We'll see what happens, and we will be here to cover it either way.
And just to, again, continue the positive thoughts, what has been a huge reason why the Braves have been able to bounce back from those multiple moments over the past month where it seemed like we had hit rock bottom, but we bounced right back. The Braves won the first game of the series against quality starting pitching. The game right after that loss to Colorado was the excellent pitching matchup between Chris Hill and Blake Snell. The Braves won it. The game right after Austin Riley went down with his wrist injury, the Braves beat Zach Wheeler. On Friday night, they're facing Landon Knack, and who has been okay. He has been okay so far this season. But one big thing, one big boost that could be there for the Braves, just win game one. Take it game by game, win game one. Then all of a sudden it becomes a bit easier to win 2 out of 3 versus 3 out of 4. You've done it in recent weeks. Just win game one. Have a big offensive night at home after getting some rest on an off day. Just win game one. And that could really be the start to a successful weekend. Steven, I know that we were up and down all over the place this podcast, just, working through the disappointment of Wednesday night's loss, trying to be positive where we could. Anything else that you got for us on this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
Nope. Yeah, it's just, obviously the Braves have an off day tomorrow, and then, this massive series, and then the home stretch, and they're still in it. The Braves, as crazy as it sounds, the Braves can still accomplish what they set out to do at the beginning of the year, which is win a World Series. That is still alive. They have, they got off to that really hot stretch in April, and they have lived off that hot stretch the whole season because they have been a 500 team since April. And, because they've been able to at least hold the line, they are still 13 games above 500, which is what they were 5 months ago. And they can still make the playoff. Like, it's still alive. And they just, at some point, they got to start playing to their talent level. Even if their talent level is less than it once was, and it is by a lot, the talent level they have on their team is still good enough to get into the playoffs. And once you're in, you can do anything. So if they start playing to their talent level, then they can make the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs, they can win the whole thing because their pitching is that good. So, I am not as positive as you are, Shawn. I think our personalities have been pretty clear on this show. You are certainly the light of positivity to my more negative. But if I was going to be Mr. Positive, that's what I would say. The Braves have enough talent to make the playoffs. And then if you make the playoffs, anybody can win it. So that's where I'll leave it for tonight.
Yeah, to your point about, they've basically been kind of riding the wave that they started with this season. The old saying goes, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Well, for the Braves this season, if this season is going to be memorable in any way, it may literally come down to how both the Braves started and they chose to finish. But like I say, I understand it's disappointing. It absolutely is. And again, my level of faith is certainly at the lowest it's been in quite a while. But it's not over. And the Braves have shown too often, too frequently over the past several years that when they still have the ability to achieve what they've set out to achieve or get close to it, they typically will deliver. They'll typically give themselves a chance. And here's a golden opportunity for them to do it. No matter how unlikely it is, just win game one. Just win that game Friday night and then take it game by game. And with each win, it becomes a bit easier to accomplish your goals. For Stephen Tolbert, at @B_Outliers on Twitter, as well as X, whatever you call it nowadays. My name's Shawn Coleman. You can find me at StatsSAC on Twitter/X. Make sure you check out all the great content from the Foul Territory family of podcasts at Foul Territory, wherever you choose to listen to the shows, at Hammer Territory across all forms of social media. For Stephen Tolbert, my name's Shawn Coleman. Hey, you know what? No matter how good or bad it is, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory podcast.